it is so fantastic, Dr. Lucia Rocca Ihenacho, if I'm not wrong. She's started anthropology in Italy, and she's qualified as a midwife and worked in independent practice offering holistic care. She moved to England when she worked for 13 years in NHS in various clinical academic positions, including as a consultant midwife in public health. She's passionate about supporting the development of positive interdisciplinary team, culture, organization, change facilitation, and has experience of mentoring midwives and medical staff in clinical practice in a wide range of settings, from home birth in London to the mountains of rural Afghanistan. She's supporting optimal birth in all birth environment as a key aspect of providing high quality care, and includes maximizing physiological birth for all women, including those with complicating conditions, which might preclude them from pursuing a completely normal birth. Her PhD focused on identifying the key ingredients which make midwifery units functioning well. And since 2015, she's been based at City University of London, when she worked as a lecturer and researcher. She's one of the co-founder and CEO of the Midwifery Unit Network. She's so fantastic. I cannot complete because she's of many books, published many books, and I want her to continue with her lovely accent because I cannot talk that much fluent like her. Thank you for coming, Dr. Lucia. It's an honor to have you.
Oh, Leila, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with you. As Irene said, it's been so interesting to hear all the different stories from everyone. So I'm really excited to be sharing things with you, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to some questions and interacting some more. And thank you so much, Augustine. I saw your webinar on birth centers, so I'm so excited, and I'm so looking forward to chat more with you. I have some slides just to start the conversation. Shall I share screen with you? And forgive me, I've got homeschooling and builders in the house. So if it remains silent, it's going to be like a miracle. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, so can you see my slides? That's great, yeah. So I hope I've chosen the right topic, but I thought for the International Day of the Midwife would be nice to discuss why I love birth center, why I love midwifery units so much, and a little bit share with you a little bit the work that we have been doing within the Midwifery Unit Network. As a Midwifery Unit Network, we've been operating since 2015, and we are mainly focused in Europe, but in reality in the last year, we've been collaborating much further afield. We started collaborating in India and in Saudi Arabia as well, which is extremely exciting. Before I talk to you about the network, I just wanted to share a story with you. This is my niece, is the daughter of my sister, and she's the first woman in 2 generations to have a completely physiological birth. My mother in the 60s, 70s had 3 cesarean sections, and today she doesn't still know why she had them. The doctors say so, and she followed the orders. And the funny story is that her mother-in-law booked her for this private clinic, of course led by obstetricians, as a gift. Because that's what you would do at that time. And of course, for me, that I identify as being the beginning of where the trouble started. My sister, when gave birth, she was very young, she was 22, to my niece. She was victim of obstetric violence. She had a terrible labor, she was traumatized, and she had health consequences, physical and emotional for a long, long time. It took my sister getting to the third birth to realize she could actually do it. I was actually her midwife for birth number 2 and birth number 3. I get emotional about talking about it, actually. And for the second one, it was very quick, but she was so scared that she could really not enjoy. That was still in Italy. For birth number 3, I said, look, I can't be here fighting with hospitals. You know, it just doesn't work. So if you want to give birth with me, come to the UK. At that time, I was already in the UK. And she moved for a month to the UK to give birth with me in the birth center that we opened. So, but the first birth she had was, you know, a terrible trauma. And I think, you know, she'll carry that with her all her life. And my niece gave birth in January in one of the first birth centers in Italy. And she had a totally straightforward birth. She had an amazing midwife who looked after her at home. So stayed at home until she was really, really in advanced labor. Then they moved into a birth center and she had the most fantastic birth. And for me, you know, all the work I do, and I take so much energy and time away from my family, and I sometimes feel guilty. And I think actually if I have contributed to her care being a little bit more like it's supposed to be, I feel really, really happy. And I feel like actually my contribution has done something. So really, you know, I always start from why we do what we do. And for me, my personal experience and also my early professional experience really made me move in the direction of try to understand, you know, why are we doing this to women and why we're making it so complicated? And this will bring us to the concept of midwifery units. This slide is just to say and to highlight that nowadays we have so much evidence about midwifery, birthplace. We have WHO, we have policy, we have guidance, we have everything that I was dreaming of when I first started my career in the early 2000s. And now we have that. And despite all this evidence, it's still such a struggle to be able to work as midwives to our full potential. So both at individual level, but especially part of a system, there are so many barriers there. And that's what really, you know, that's what really fires me, is to fight this injustice towards both women and midwives. So just one for all, if we look at the Lancet series, I'm sure you're all familiar with this. If you haven't seen it, you can download it for free. It's amazing reading. And basically these tell us that midwifery is a vital public health resource, because we know where there is strong midwifery, there are better outcomes, the care costs less, and women are happier about their experiences. But in order to implement this, we need a fundamental system shift. So we really need to turn the system inside out. And this is why it's been so difficult, because everywhere, even in Europe, where we have midwifery is regulated, everywhere in Europe, we have European legislation recognizing midwives as autonomous practitioners. Irene was mentioning earlier how in Spain is part of Europe, and despite legislation having been there for quite a while, midwives are still struggling to be recognized as autonomous practitioners. So of course, this creates a huge power imbalance, and it creates, you know, a barrier that midwives need to fight. They need to destroy this barrier in order to be able to work to their full potential. So we are wasting energy in this rather than being able to work in what we should be doing. So it's sometimes, and it's exhausting, yeah? It's the everyday power struggle that is really exhausting. So I mentioned about the evidence. One for all, I point to in this direction of this systematic review, which basically tell us that midwife-led settings for birth have better outcomes than the obstetric unit and have similar perinatal outcomes for the baby. And the conclusion of this review is that we should be scaling up midwife-led birth settings everywhere. And yet we are struggling. This slide summarizes a little bit, and I always speak about the 3 pillars. When I talk to people in policy, politicians, managers, I always say midwifery units cost less, they have better outcomes for healthy women, and they have better experiences for both service users and staff. And also frees time for the obstetricians and the medical staff and the hospital to look after women who need medical care. Because if we put everyone in the same place, not only we have worse outcomes for healthy women, but also we are distributing the energy of the staff who should be looking after women who have complications. And these women deserve the same good care as women in birth centers. So, you know, by organizing care this way, we are really not utilizing resources in the optimal manner. Okay. So this is what I always say. And the 3 pillars, I have to say, I tell midwives, this is your mantra. You need to repeat saying it. Better outcomes, better outcomes. And even in the UK, in which normally we have good policy and we have, you know, people kind of use the evidence, when I go around and talk to people, they still think that they say midwifery units are safe, are the same as the hospital. And no, they're not, because for healthy women, they have better outcomes. And we really need to own this, we need to embrace it. So the other aspect, so I always speak about 2 things. One is birthplace, and the other is something else, which I don't want to spoil, because I always try to approach it this way. So imagine you have a treatment that reduces preterm birth by 24%. Imagine this is a pill. Imagine this is a medicine. We would be giving it to all women. Well, actually, we do have something as magical that has these incredible outcomes, and this is continuity of care. And despite this, we are not implementing it, and we are not, or where we're trying to implement it, we're not implementing it seriously. So it's very important that we always talk about the 2 pillars, birthplace and continuity of care, because the 2 things really need to go together. And you can have a look at the systematic review, is quite an interesting read. So moving to midwifery units, and you'll see how both the element of the place of birth, which is far away from the industrial model, which embraces continuity of care. So this is what we call the biopsychosocial model of care. So it's a model of care which looks after the biological, the psychological, and the social needs of the woman. Because a birth never happens just as a medical event or a biological event, but of course we know that the emotions of that woman have a huge influence, and also a birth is always in a culture, in a society, in a group. And very often when a baby is born, if it's the first time for the mother, you also have this woman turning from being a woman to becoming a mother as well, which is fundamental. So this model of care is in huge contraposition to the medical industrial model, which is what happens in hospitals, particularly when they are large hospitals. Oops, my slides don't turn anymore. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. Give me a second. I moved oh, here we go. Okay, yeah. So if we look, this is a little model that came out, is a result of the work from my PhD. When I looked at all the interviews, all the literature, everything coming out from midwives' experiences, as well as service user experiences, at the core of everything was building relationships and trust. So the women would talk about how they felt they could trust the midwife, they built a relationship throughout pregnancy, and the same thing, the staff was talking about building relationships within the team and also with the service users. And this was at the core of a huge job satisfaction for the midwives, and also positive experiences for staff, sorry, for women. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with midwifery units. So I'm just going to show you some pictures just to have an idea about Europe. These pictures are from several places, particularly in the UK. So we have in the UK, 2 types of midwifery units, and they are all part of the public health system, the NHS, National Health Service. We have units which are within the hospital called alongside midwifery units, and they can be fairly large. Some of them might even facilitate up to 2,000 births a year, quite large. And then there are midwifery units in the community. They tend to be much smaller, and they tend to be also more present in rural areas. We have about 55 in England, just to give you an idea. And they tend to have anything between roughly 50 births to maybe 500-600 maximum. And they, of course, in this case, when there is a need of transfer for the alongside midwifery unit, women are transferred to the obstetric unit via a chair or a trolley. When women are interested in midwifery units, we use the ambulance service. And these are some pictures from one of my favorite birth centers, the Barkentine Birth Center in London. Then in some European countries, we have a different type of units, which traditionally in UK used to be called maternity homes. And these are actually houses which the midwife owns or rents and uses as a place where women give birth. They tend to be much smaller, and they are generally private. So this is part of a private service. As midwifery unit network, when we first started, I started getting involved with midwifery units. I was part of the team which opened this birth center here in London, the Barkentine Birth Center. And we realized when we started talking to other midwifery units that we were struggling, all of us. We were having a lot of trouble in terms of liaising with the hospital. We felt quite oppressed in the way we could operate. Very often, if the birth center wasn't busy, midwives would be pulled to go and work in the obstetric unit. So I decided to create a network to facilitate midwives from different midwifery units to talk to each other, share knowledge, share solutions to problems, but also to feel stronger together. Very often, midwives just enjoyed talking about what they were doing, and just sharing and letting out their frustrations, they would already feel better about it. So in 2015, we joined forces with Sheena Barham and Mary Newborn and my colleague Felipe, and we created the Midwifery Unit Network. And since then, we've been quite active across Europe. And really, if we think about the aim, the mission is to increase the implementation, so have more midwifery units across Europe, and to support the improvement of the existing ones. So if you look at this little scheme, this tells a little bit about the activities we do. At the core of everything, we do networking and influencing. We have a very active Facebook group with almost 6,500 members. And we do quite a lot of training across Europe in different languages. We do research, so I'm employed by City University of London. So a lot of the research activity we do, of course, is in partnership with the academic institution, but we also try to digest the evidence and to make it approachable by the public and by midwives. Because not everyone is happy or has the time to go through 20 or 30 papers. So that kind of summarizing exercise can be quite useful. We also help midwifery units who are struggling. So they contact us and we do like a little diagnostic of where the trouble might be. And we also help them. And very often, having external people coming with a fresh eye can be incredibly useful, because when you are within your organization, very often you don't see where the trouble is. But also we can be very useful to say the things let's say a birth center has problems because it's feeling oppressed in terms of relationship with the obstetric unit. The midwives within that birth center, they don't feel they have the power, or it can be dangerous for them to speak out. But an external person coming and saying those things, for us, is not dangerous because we cannot be touched. So it's quite useful in terms of power dynamics to have someone coming advocating for you. We have also done work on standards, midwifery unit standards for Europe. And this was a huge project, which we thought was going to be about 6 months, but it turned out to be 18 months project. And we created the first European standards for birth centers. And those were launched in 2018. And they're being translated in several languages. And now they are being used in Brazil. And we are also working in partnership with Saudi Arabia to try to see if we can bring the concept of birth centers there. So a very interesting starting point. And the standards, we have now developed a self-assessment tool. So midwifery units can use this assessment tool to self-diagnose where they are meeting the standards and where not. And then together we can have a chat and identify areas for improvement. So this is just to give you, I'm just doing a quick round of pictures just to show you what we've been doing in the last few years. This was a conference in London. The standards, you can download them in English from the website. At the moment, they're uploaded in English and Italian, and we also have a Spanish version. Portuguese version is coming out. These pictures from November 2019 sounds like a lifetime ago, and I feel also emotional looking at so many people together. It feels so alien right now, I have to say. And this was our first European conference, which was a great success. And this in Barcelona gave a big push to the implementation of birth centers in Spain. And we are now working with the Department of Health in trying to normalize the idea of having birth centers in Spain, which, you know, as Irene was mentioning earlier, is a hugely medicalized system. So our training, you can find if you go on the website, midwiferynetwork.org, you go on training and development. And we have now, we have several workshops, which at the moment are not running because we cannot do anything face-to-face, but we have e-learning modules, which you can find actually at a discounted price, 50%, because we cannot reach midwives with the face-to-face training. We have decided to try to reach them as much as we can, creating this offer for the e-learning modules. So if you're interested, and the modules we have are here, we have a module on an introduction to midwifery units, personalized care, how to safely reduce unnecessary interventions, and also about intermittent auscultation, how to do safely. And what else I wanted to say? Well, you know, I think as midwives, we have really the duty towards ourselves, so to be able to work to our full potential, but also towards women, for women to have appropriate care and respectful care is a human right. And I think we need to feel really, really strong in really standing up and not accepting when we are forced to work in a system that is not recognizing our skills and is not recognizing women's autonomy. So this is really a call for midwives to get together and to stop what's happening in so many countries, which is unfortunately disrespectful care. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My goodness, what a gift. Just everything that you share, everything that you are, everything that you do is such a gift to the world. Can you click the end sharing on your screen?
Oh, yes.
It'll be up on the Zoom link. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Such a gift. Thank you so much. My gosh, I'm so honored to include your wisdom in this presentation. We all learned so much, and I can see the future of what is about to happen there with this incredible resource you've created of the website and all of the e-modules and the graphics, and it's just so professional and so modern, and I think people are really going to start to listen to this very important ancient message that midwifery is the place to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I don't know if there is any question. I've just opened the chat now to see.
Yeah, we've gotten lots of thank yous, and that's perfect. What a beautiful center. You're a really powerful midwife. Such a beautiful place to give birth. What a wonderful presentation. Yeah, there's lots of love coming your way, but I don't see any questions. So that means you've answered them all. Layla, we have no sound for you, just so you know. Well, we're very excited to start our next presentation with a panel. Again, thank you, Dr. Lucia. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.